Hello, I'm here. It is that time. It's the beginning of the month, so it is time for Pagan Book Club live stream. It's been a day. I'm wearing my Thor shirt because we went to go finally see Thor: Love and Thunder. Earlier today, now that it's been out for a while, but it was like discount movie day, so the theater was actually pretty crowded. But that still kind of made it fun. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about this. It is to stir a magic cauldron. It's actually, leave it to me, Chaos Crew. I mean, there are probably some out there who would call me a chaos witch since I'm not really following, traditional witchcraft, quote unquote. But yeah, so leave it to me to do this. But I had acquired 2 books in this 3-book series, and of course, I've now learned that I'm reading them backwards. So we started last month with To Light a Sacred Flame, and then now I have To Stir a Magic Cauldron, which was apparently the 2nd book in the series, with Sacred Flame being the last. And then I went on Amazon and had to order the 1st book, which was I don't care about updates, computer, but I went and I ordered the 1st book in the series, which was To Ride a Silver Broomstick. So interesting to see where that one kind of starts things off with, now that I've already seen kind of the whole picture that the author has created in these books, which I really did like the 1st one a lot. To Light a Sacred Flame, I found a lot there that I thought was really resonated with me and was useful, even though I'm not really a Wiccan and don't really go for all that fancy stuff and long drawn out memorized rituals. I feel like that's just hard for me as someone with a bad short-term memory. But yeah, for this one, I did take some amount of notes here, like I tried to when I was reading the 1st one. I have like my little tabs here, and highlighted a little bit as I was going through it, as I want to do. So let's see. I don't think I really found it quite as interesting as the 1st one, maybe just because some of it was a little bit repeated in here, or there was just less that I personally wanted to take away and put into my own practice. But I did still really like it. And this book, it just is kind of giving you some of the very basics when it comes to conjuring and the actual ritual part of magic. So this one just really focuses on casting a circle and calling in quarters and how to go about doing that, and explains that whole concept, which is just not something that I have really done or seen a need to do yet. I have been in some group ritual instances in which have not really done that, and now some that have. And my view is kind of starting to shift toward that in that respect, but I'll kind of touch more on that later as we get into discussing this book, because this one is just more about the actual methods of doing those types of things. Yeah, conjuring the circle, calling quarters, and then it goes into the other chapters, deal with different types of conjuring and how to go about doing that. So we can kind of gloss over those things very quickly here and kind of see what I notated as interesting. She does note here that kind of one of the things that I did both like about Wicca and thought was cool when I was like a weird, edgy teen was all of the tools that come with it, like the athame and the chalice and all of those symbols of elements and high magic that go into it. But then at the same time, as someone who was also an edgy, jobless teen without an income or anything like that, it was kind of hard to get into practicing any of that kind of stuff because it kind of felt like a little bit of a barrier to actually get in there and doing it, because I'm like, oh well, I don't have any of these tools. I don't really know how to go about getting those tools. This was in the pre-interweb, pre-Amazon days, so means were limited and new age shops in the Midwest were few and far between. So yeah, that just kind of put me off of actually being able to really get hands-on and do anything, as much as I had an interest in witchcraft and those types of things. But she kind of points out in this book that every religious structure has tools that are designed to assist the seeker, as she puts it. And so, yeah, these are all just tools and props that they say lift the psychological spirits of the participants. And so, even in the pagan rituals that I've participated in, I have come to find that, having ritual garb or a musical instrument and things like that, or a big fire, while makes it very easy and intuitive to slip into that alternate mode of thinking and really get into it, those things really still aren't necessary, but they definitely do help, just kind of heighten the mood and help flip that mental switch between I'm just hanging out with some friends around a fire chatting to, okay, it's ritual mode time, and being able to just have like a separate outfit. It's not just, like LARPing or some stuff that people might make fun of it and poke fun of it as. These are all different tools and means by which we can reach that kind of altered state of consciousness, slip between the worlds, ascend to higher realms, whatever, talk to God, whatever you want to call it. And whatever means by which you get there, there are a multitude of different tools that we use to access those things. One thing you might have noticed here in the background are these cool little candles that I just made recently by just taking some dollar store candles that you probably saw in my dollar store witchy haul video, and just printing out pictures I had saved on Pinterest on sticker paper and slapping them on there. And so I have Loki and Freya, and just me being the cheeky little scoundrel that I am, I had to kind of go for some images that were kind of reminiscent of that religious iconography, just to kind of take it to that next level, But also, I just thought that those were some cool pictures, and definitely very much suited to how I personally do see these deities most times. So also appropriate, as well as being a little bit irreverent. That's kind of how I try to approach things. I'm a cute girly goth after all. So there's a healthy dose of respect, and I think good communicative relationship with most of these deities that I work with, but also just a little drop of irreverence, which, I think if you've read most of the Norse myths is fine. I think you'll find a healthy dose of that in there. But yeah, I even have it underlined here on the very next page. It says that you and divinity are all that's necessary when it comes to actually practicing paganism, magic, or whatever you want to call it. The rest of the stuff is fluff, as she puts it, but I would say, just kind of like extra seasonings in the cake, if you will. It's all just, the rest of it's all just icing on the spiritual cake. But one kind of interesting point that they bring up here, because while I do kind of find myself just kind of subconsciously paying attention to phases of the moon so that I can try to more note, do I notice any type of change just in the energies around me or in my own personal energies? Or if I do want to get into the witchcraft side of things and perform a magical working, what are the kind of the best circumstances and seasonings to add to that cake, if you will, to make it come out the best? And she points out that magic travels the path of least resistance. And so books are great and phone conversations are great, but all of the book reading in the world, it won't do you any good unless you actually start putting it into practice for yourself, which I think is something that I'm still struggling with. I've done a good handful of things now, I would say, personally, and have, gone to some gatherings and participated in some group rituals. But yeah, in terms of my own personal like spirituality or practice, I don't know, maybe I'm too hard on myself. I always feel like I could be doing more or doing better. But I am trying to find that good balance that works for me in terms of having a daily practice versus just living real life. I still have a full-time job, and it's definitely easy to still get caught up into that grind where I'm just so stuck in that routine of wake up, go to work, come home. Everything after that just kind of feels like more work, so I'm gonna veg out and then go to bed and wake up and repeat. But I've been kind of manifesting and reaching out for some help on that front lately. So hopefully I will be able to work really hard in the coming months, especially as now we're kind of getting into that autumn dormant part of the year where we are just kind of not only retreating into our homes away from the cold, but have maybe more time to be introspective and work on ourselves, work on our practice. So that's definitely one thing that I'm still struggling to do and striving to do. And so she goes on to say here that daily devotions can be very important to the working witch, and calls it kind of a key to success. Because witchcraft, it says, is not simply a set of magical operations, it is indeed a religion. And that is something that I kind of put in my notes here because I think, yeah, much like witchcraft, I often say that just paganism in general, to me, is just more like a lifestyle than a religion because it is less about, oh, am I a good pagan? Like people say that, you're a good Christian because you go to church every Sunday and yada, yada, yada. And so maybe it's not so much about having a weekly or daily practice. It's just making sure that you have a kind of what people would call a right relationship with your deities. If it's working for you, then, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so I'm trying to just kind of go with the flow, keep that relationship built up between me and my deities. I did kind of give a little gift of some first fruits to Freya and Freya the other day because one of my coworkers has their own apple orchard and grows like apples and pears and will bring them in to share. And so they brought in some of the first of the year's harvest, and they were these cute little tiny apples, kind of smaller than what you would be, fit to sell in the grocery store, but they just make the perfect little altar gift to my Vonner deities. And I even have one over here in my little hell shrine. Little apple I just felt like would be a good gift for her as well. Don't ask me why, but yeah, definitely for Freya as a harvest deity, agricultural deity, and Freya as a kind of fertility, knowledge and passion deity, giving her kind of the apple also, and him one felt like a good gift. And I actually did, usually whenever I go to kind of leave them little gifts like that, I don't do it super regularly, but at least once a week, I try to kind of give them something or pay them some little form of attention. Um, Usually it'll just be kind of like, oh, like, thanks, Ray, I love you. Here you go, got you something, and that's it. And so this time I did actually decide to ask for something, as I gave Frey his little like gift of first fruits, and kind of ask for some opportunities and some blessings. And there do seem to be some stirring and coming my way. I don't want to say too much and jinx it. Kind of touches on that a little bit in this book as well, in terms of kind of when to keep silent is one of the like witchcraft laws, to be taken pretty seriously, depending on, you know, coven by coven basis and practices. Some can really take, you know, keeping things secret and practices secret very seriously. So yeah, I don't want to jinx it, but yeah, it seems like hopefully my manifestations are paying off, and that on the rare occasions that I do actually go to the gods and ask them for something, they usually come through for me in one way or the other, which is kind of why I'm still here, you know, on this path, because I can't argue with the results. So it also says that devotions can have a purpose besides just establishing a relationship with deity. Depending on your practice and what you do, which to me, it can just be trying to go sit and meditate in front of the altar, albeit briefly, or just to kind of take some time to be outside and commune that way. They can calm the mind, open the spirit, and allow one to just take a moment to look beyond the present events that keep us occupied, you know, that day-to-day grind of reality, and open you up, even if it's just for that brief instant, to the positive forces of the universe. There's kind of a concept in Hindu tradition that I really want to like go back and study again and touch on further in some videos, called darsana, where it's this idea that while you are looking at an image of the deity, you are having that personal one-on-one moment of connection with that spirit or that universal all through that image. And like, not only are you beholding them, but like they're beholding you, and it's just that kind of equivalent exchange of energy and just knowing. It's hard to kind of put it into words, but it's just that moment. You know, when I go to my Freya altar, even just for a brief second, when I'm home on my lunch break, and leave her a piece of fruit and say, hey, like, thank you, love you, Freya. Just wanted to say I'm thinking of you, and thanks for being here, and thinking of me when you can, and helping me when you can. And yeah, you just have that brief moment of connection with deity, and through them to just kind of, yeah, the universe, the positive forces of the universe, as they put it here. And I have it underlined that it is not just kind of a testimony of faith, but also an act of personal empowerment when you do those types of things. And so one thing that they touch on here is kind of developing your own forms of daily devotion and how to do that, and that it can be as long or as short as it needs to be, or as you like. And another thing that I definitely kind of wrote down in my notes here, that I wanted to try to do and need to do, is to kind of experiment by maybe writing a simple daily devotion to Freya. I have a couple that I have like kind of saved that I found on the interwebs. But then, yeah, sometimes when I'm driving to work, I'll just be like looking at the beautiful sky as I'm driving, and just kind of make up a quick little poem or prayer to Freya or whoever the mood strikes me, and do it that way. But yeah, it might be interesting to try and experiment with just developing a quick, short daily devotion that you can just memorize or improvise off of as needed. And it said to practice doing that for 30 days and just note the results. So that's kind of something that, I don't really want to turn it into too much of like a scientific study where it's like you're trying to break it down and examine it too much into its smallest parts, or quantify it too much. But I think it just would be interesting for my own personal practice as someone who is still kind of new at this to do something like that, and just see if I notice any changes or deeper connection with deity as a result, or just if I notice any change or benefit to myself as a result. So that's definitely something that I want to keep in mind to try and add to my practice. because, yeah, as they point out, it can help develop not only that connection with deity, but also just your own personal power and magical skills. And so, yeah, I think above all else, witchcraft and paganism, whatever label you put on it or however you go about it, is just kind of a deeper realization and understanding that everything is connected. Being able to see that web of weird, as the Norse might call it, and just the reciprocal relationship between us and nature and everyone and everything in it as a result. And being able to kind of see those energies and draw on them to help you and not really try to manipulate so much as just, yeah, draw on those positive energies to help us when we need them. Because one thing that I also struggle with that I had noted here is that a devotion should always raise your energy level and leave you feeling refreshed. And so someone had once said to them that you are never to use your energy to do these types of things, which is something that kind of, as a magical beginner or baby witch, whatever you want to say, that is something that I think, as someone that also had a lot of intuitive gifts that I might not have known that I had growing up, was a struggle for me. And so, yeah, magic is something that I wanted to explore, and witchcraft is something that I wanted to explore so that I can learn how to draw on energies other than my own and not be, fucking drained all the time, because that would be nice. And so, yeah, they go on developing your own devotions, daily devotionals that you can try. Magical thinking, concepts of magical thinking, just that whole idea that I kind of touched on in my video on that, just that at your core, at some subconscious level, you have to believe that it's real and that you have the power and that it's going to work. And you have to believe that you deserve to have this connection with deity, and that they do want to work with us, and that they will be of help to us when we do call on them. One thing I do have highlighted here is that she says, where the witch is, that place is sacred. Because I feel like, for me personally, as much as this book does spend, pretty much the entire book is all about calling quarters, casting a circle, and creating sacred space. For me, it's like, do I really need to have these long, drawn-out rituals every single time I want to do something, large or small, in order to do that? And I think where I've noticed that my own personal practice and belief has kind of started to differ, or maybe not so much, because I think if you are a solitary practitioner, maybe you don't need to, go whole hog every single time, and you will just kind of have quick, personal, but powerful things that you can do in your daily life that maybe don't draw on such high magic or such elaborate rituals, but still get the job done. And I feel like that's kind of how I am more so in my personal day-to-day practice and day-to-day life. Like, I don't have time for all that. And but don't get me wrong, like, one of the first things that I did when I was exploring this path was kind of put up a little ward or barrier on my home and kind of create my own protective sigils and create a sacred space out of my house and the land that it sits on, and kind of create some protection for it and create, a semi-permeable barrier, if you will. And I would like to do a video more about protection magics here coming up soon, and kind of delve into more of what I do personally for that. But yeah, so I'm not really like just going total chaos witch over here. I have my reasons and my method to the madness, but yeah, I'm like, do I need to cast a circle in this room every single time if, in my view, my entire house is a sacred space? And I have altars and shrines running all up through this place, and it was nice to kind of be able to use those and incorporate those spaces. The last time I did do a cleansing on my house, and draw on those deities and those elemental powers that they also represent, and drawing on elemental powers that I borrowed from the last book to light a sacred flame, and some of the rituals and ideas and suggestions that they lay out there in doing that. And so yeah, I got a lot of that I wanted to incorporate into my personal practice. But yeah, I feel like I just do a lot of things intuitively, and I'm definitely somewhat of what might be called a mind witch, if you will. I have a very overactive imagination most times, so yeah, I'm able to, I think, get a lot done up in here. But in terms of being able to actually organize the chaos that is up here, having tools and altars and things to help concentrate that and concentrate your mind and focus your will, that is definitely when those types of things and those tools come in handy. And I think the other area where I'm kind of starting to notice that my personal practice is kind of shifting more toward maybe there is a purpose for casting circles and casting a protected sacred space, depending on, kind of the place and the natural energies of the land. I think there definitely have been times where I was maybe a little bit too chaos witch with it. And I think, especially as someone who is a Norse pagan, what I maybe we need to keep in mind first and foremost is that guest right and hospitality, and not only being a good host but being a good guest, are very important in those myths and in that culture and in like many other cultures. So I think that, yeah, when we are going to different places and doing these rituals, not only is it important to establish a good one-on-one relationship with deities, but also to the spirits of that particular place. And I think part of being not only being a good guest wherever you are at doing those things, but also if you are someone leading these group rituals, being a good host maybe means looking out for the safety of your group by taking the time to call quarters and make some sort of circle and call some kind of backup to help you, or just, yeah, maybe just familiarize yourself with the area first so that you can make sure things go off smoothly and without complications for people. So I think that's definitely some place where, in my own personal experience, I'm definitely coming to find that ritual and things like that, and having procedures and things like that in place can be very beneficial and important. So like I said, I didn't really have too much specifically to talk about in the book itself. It talks about choosing a patron god or goddess. Been there, done that. Chapter 4 is the conjuring the mechanics of quarters, like I talked about, and different methods to do that, which I think are definitely very useful, even if you're not like Wiccan or traditional witchcraft per se. It says here that the magic circle is a fundamental requirement of all kinds of occult ceremonial work and one of the most ancient. And it says here that the magicians of Babylon and Assyria used magic circles in their rites, and descriptions of their workings have come down to us together with the name they gave to the magic circle, Usurtu. That's not true. What? And so how to summon a simple personal circle, I think that's definitely something, when it describes it here, that I have kind of maybe found myself doing inadvertently. It says it's the mental enclosure of your body with some sort of energy field. And I do this kind of when I am going into the office or going into a crowded place sometimes, to just kind of protect my own energy as someone who's very sensitive and vulnerable to the energies of my surroundings and of others. And I thought it was interesting that one of the examples that they note is whether you have visualized mirrors, a blue bubble, or an invisible shield. And for me, it's not a blue bubble, but like a blue egg, like maybe an egg-shaped bubble. But yeah, mine is kind of like a teal robin's egg blue, is my personal color that I've come to associate with like protecting my energy in a group space. So I thought that was kind of cool and very on the mark on that part. And then, yeah, it talks about different steps and different types of circles. and ways that you can do that. One thing that I think where maybe like just my own personal beliefs do differ a little bit is that it talks here about like an example of how you can cast a circle and kind of breaks down the chant and the invocation step by step, like why you're using the specific verbiage that you're using and like why you sometimes have to be very specific in the wording that you're using, because you especially when you are working with spirits and some deities, like some trickster deities, you have to be very specific in your wording and lay out like exactly who you want to call in and why and what you want them to do when they get there. And I definitely understand that, but it starts off by saying, "I conjure thee, O great circle of power," and then like you're specifically stating what you're going to conjure, a circle of power, blah blah blah, and then the next part is, "So that you will be a boundary, so you will be for me a boundary between the world of men and the realm of the mighty spirits. Now you are cutting a boundary between the world of the mundane and the world of spirit, creating a safe space for you to collect the energy." Maybe I'm like just not understanding the way that they're wording it right, because I'm over here like cutting a boundary between the world of the mundane and the world of spirit. Why would I want to put up a boundary? I feel like if I'm going out there to like connect with some energies, I want to like establish a connection with the realm of spirit, not cut it. But maybe I'm taking that wrong. Maybe it means that the circle itself is kind of creating that pillar, that Yggdrasil, if you will, where the circle is channeling it down from and to a specific place to keep it harnessed. So that could definitely be useful. I think, yeah, especially if you are in a new place and you don't want the energy to be leaking out all over the place. Some spirits, local spirits, might find that rude and it'll be like, "Why are you coming over here in our land, conjuring your gods? We don't want you here." So yeah, I think maybe that would be the purpose. But yeah, I'm like, wait, why would you want to make the first thing you do to be to establish like a boundary between you and spirit? I feel like you're out there to do the exact opposite. But yeah, it goes on to say that it's more to keep out anything negative and ensure that only good things and the things that are welcome can get in. And then it talks about casting mind circles, using meditation and yeah, kind of doing the whole mind witch thing. And this is something that I definitely kind of try to practice as like more of a meditation exercise. As I'm kind of laying down to go to bed for the night, is just a calming technique. And there's also like a focusing technique as someone who can be very spacey and find it hard to concentrate and meditate as a result. But it's like, yeah, if you don't have tools or means or methods available to you in the real world, it says that you can just close your eyes and move into a meditation sequence, and from there begin your altar devotions. Create a sacred space and instead of an altar in your mind. There's definitely times where it's like I didn't get to it during the day, but as I'm laying down to go to bed, I'll picture my Odin altar in my mind and just picture myself going there and leaving him something and having just that exchange of like energy and having connection that way. It says, and it also points out, like, don't get frustrated if this takes you a while to do and many tries until you can get it right. But the more often you practice those types of things, the easier you might find it to practice those visualization techniques. And it even says here that they learned to do this technique by practicing every night before they fell asleep. So yeah, instead of counting sheep, go to an altar in your mind and hang out with some deities. It's fun. Or at least, yeah, at the very least, I find it just useful as a mental kind of training exercise to kind of maybe help get my brain in shape to focus on something for more than just a few minutes at a time. and that you can just practice in your head, so that when you want to go and do it in real life or in like a group ritual, maybe you will be able to kind of more easily memorize and just kind of get into that space where you don't have to think so much about what you're doing, because as someone who has kind of participated in leading rituals, it is kind of, you still have kind of that like mental partition of you're leading a ritual for others, and so you have to kind of hold a little bit part of you back from fully getting lost in it yourself, because you got to say the right words and do all the things and make sure that everyone else is having their moment of connection. And so there's always that little voice in the back of my mind being like, oh, what do I got to do now? What do I got to say next? There was something here that I wanted to mention, because both these books so far, this one and To Light a Sacred Flame, they mention something that like those person's personal practice and like learning and training draws very heavily on what they call powwow magic. And I'm just like over here, like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know when these books were written and when they first came out. But like when I hear the word powwow, as someone who lives in North America, I think of the Native American powwow, like group ritual practice, which is a close practice. And so they're referring it to here as like powwow, as in Native American folk magic, but like they call it the last vestige of European craft, and refer to it as folk magic from like the Dutch German immigrants mixed with Native American traditions of their new homeland that they kind of adopted when they came over from the old world. And people and places were still super Christian, but folk tradition, folk belief has always just kind of had that little kernel of paganism underlying a lot of it. And so they're kind of taking it, from my understanding, as it's a specific term for the folk magic of the immigrants mixed with native folk magic to create something new. From the little that I was kind of able, like I've only done a quick introductory like Google search just to figure out what this term was and if it was true in the context that they were using it, because I'd never come across this before. And from the little that I was kind of able to find of it, it is still kind of very heavily Christian based, but it's kind of into that whole territory of like healing hands and invoking saints and God and Mother Mary to do those types of things, like weather magic and water witching, which is something that I had just brought up recently, like using divination, dowsing rods. That's what they're called, dowsing rods, to find water and stuff. Is something and a folk practice that you will find here in places still to this day. And so from the little that I was kind of able to glean, it's something kind of along those lines. But yeah, if you've ever come across this term and know anything about it, let me know, because I've never heard of that before. But I feel like we need to maybe come up with another word for it, like just American folk magic, but not Native American folk magic. I don't know. All the pieces are there. Someone do something with that. But yeah, I had never come across that before. But it'll be so you're aware, they bring that up more than once through these two books, and I don't know if they'll touch on it more in the first book because I haven't gotten there yet. But it is just something that I kind of made a note of. But what I have in my notes here is just kind of like one thing that I've noticed as the big difference between paganism versus the like Christianity that came later, is that it placed the priest between the people and God as the only kind of intermediary by which these higher powers could be accessed, whereas paganism is called the religion of the people for a reason. It's what the people believed, and that they had their own individual relationship with these deities and these spirits of the land and spirits of place. And so it kind of, I feel like, took away people's individual authority and ability to have an interpersonal relationship with deity, because everything had to go through the priest class now. And it took away our individual power to connect with divinity and affect change in our own lives and have our own kind of power over things, and put all that power and authority in the hands of the church. Just saying. But what else did I have here? Like I said, not too much that I had kind of noted compared to the first book. Chapter 6 is Conjuring Power and Aspects of Divinity. And notes kind of again here that the secret to power is not attempting to take it from someone or strategically overcome someone. I think that's definitely something that a mentality that too many people have in the modern age, is this just like zero-sum mentality where it's like if someone else has something, it means it's being taken away from me. Whereas, like things like a relationship with divinity, it doesn't run out. There's enough to go around for everybody, and it's like not a competition and things like that. Another thing, though, that I did have noted here is that when it talks about things like learning to draw on other energy sources so that you're not just drawing on your own energy all the time, technique that I do like and that I just kind of had intuitively developed for myself is drawing from the earth, drawing from Mother Earth herself. And it says here in this passage that pagans can sometimes spend a lot of time and focus on drawing down celestial energies and focusing on astrology and moon phases and things like that. But I think that's maybe where it delves more into like the paganism and animism aspect of things, is that it's equally as important to, as above, so below. We can draw up energies from the earth as well. It's not only good for grounding, grounding, but you can also draw on that steady, warm, comforting Mother Earth energy when you need it. And so that's definitely something that I will do if you're just kind of feeling that 2:00 slump after lunch on the work day and it's nap time and you're struggling to stay awake at your desk. That's definitely something that I just kind of found myself doing, was just take a minute to picture that your feet and your whole body are connected through you to the ground, and just draw up a little of that like energy and put some pep back in your step, even if it's only for a little while, just enough to get you through the day. It talks about like some very quick, easy ways and just generic, all-purpose ways that you can draw on Mother and Mother Goddess energy, draw on Father or God, masculine deity energy, drawing up healing energy, and weather witching. So I thought that was all really cool. Invoking different aspects of deity. Not something I've really seen done too much in personal practice, but it definitely is done in some circles where people will actually try to not exactly like have the deity possess them, because I don't know if you can handle all of that, but just kind of invoking an aspect of deity for ritual purposes. Conjuring sun power, conjuring star power. I thought that the chant for this was really cool. That is one that I did kind of have marked off in the book to go back, because I think one thing that I have kind of found myself resonating with, and which maybe you could justify existing in some type of pre-Christian religion and like ancestor traditions, is that idea that like the stars are watching us and that like the stars are ancestors and just those who have gone before. You'll see in a lot of the Norse myths that some of the Jotun in particular, or just people that like and beings that weren't quite at the level of being able to be ranked among the Aesir for whatever reason, but still were renowned or won themselves glory and honor, would have been put into the sky as stars or constellations. And so this ritual for drawing down or conjuring star power I thought was cool. because it begins by saying, like, I stir forth my ancient ancestors of the stars and call forth the mighty ones of the starry realms, etc., etc. There was another one here, Words of the Star Goddess, which I just thought, like, I'm going to have to set aside for later because I thought it would make a really good ritual or devotion to Freya. I won't get into the whole wording here because we're already like 45 minutes in, and I usually try to keep these to an hour, but the next book, the next chapter is Conjuring Minor and Major Magics. And so I thought this was cool that it not only talks about like minor magics as in just like minor spell works, but it gives like an outline, just an outline of spell work and like what the purpose would be and how you go about building your own spell step by step. And so it says step 1 is to know yourself, know what you want to accomplish by doing this spell, and know how to best get that spell to work and take, the path of least resistance, as they put it. And then the next step is just to will that spell will work and that you'll be able to conjure it into being and that your deities will back you up. The next step is to dare, to have the guts and the willpower to actually go forth and do that thing. And then the part that I kind of mentioned earlier in the beginning of this live stream when I said that I had been working on manifesting some things, but I didn't want to kind of speak it aloud yet lest I jinx it by saying it too much. The last step is to be silent, to learn to keep your mouth shut before you perform, to learn to keep your mouth shut while you're waiting for results, and learn to keep your mouth shut after the operation because it protects your confidence and your reputation. So I thought that that's the kind of something I take into my own personal practice. There's a reason why I kind of call the rabbit one of my philia or totem animals, if you will, is because it's just that nature of like being kind of quiet, keeping your cards close to your chest and not always talking about what you're doing while you're doing it behind the scenes, lest something or someone jinx it. But when it comes to keep silent in terms of like a Wiccan read and things like, never share your Book of Shadows or the Coven Book of Shadows with anyone else, or like never share this with anyone else, I feel like that's where it just keeps that barrier up and keeps people from being able to access and actually practice some of these things. So I like that these books really like break it down for you, like the reason, like not just how to do it, but the why, like the reason why that you phrase things the way you do, the reason why you call on lunar magics and like what the different moon phases represent and how you can make those work for you and why you want to try to make those work for you when doing a spell. So yeah, it has a whole breakdown on moon phases and using those for magic, which I thought was cool. Days of the week, which, as a Norse pagan, days of the week, the names come straight from the Norse deities, so you can like break your daily practices down along those lines if you want to. Planetary aspects, all that kind of astrology and astronomy stuff, which is so much fun, but also so complicated and so much to memorize. But yeah, there's some pretty good brief breakdowns on all of that. There's even another section in here on candle magic. I'm pretty sure there was an entire appendices and the to Light a Sacred Flame book all about color correspondences and color magic, but there's a whole section on it here too, where it just kind of breaks down the basic principles behind it, like color magic and the types of oil you use to dress a candle, types of herbs you might incorporate, sigils that you carve, and like who you call on as you light a candle. Made some of my own divinity candles back here, so excited to incorporate those. Something that I do have highlighted here as we kind of get toward the end of the book that I definitely liked was that it's another of the Wiccan mysteries, as they call it, just to realize that to each person, the world of mundane and magic alike are singular in personal associations, because each of us is different and has our own personal way that we've grown up and our own personal way that we view the world and all of that. Things in books or teachings for others, just because it says that a particular color or plant or scent is associated with a particular thing, if that doesn't work for you personally, then it's very important to make up your own personal symbolic associations. I did that whole live stream on symbolism and magic with Shadow Moon Witch, kind of touching on that. That it's like, unlike, and it says here that unlike other Wiccan and magical book, this one does not contain just a direct color correspondence chart for you to refer to, because for things like that, for personal associations, it is very important for you to not only take what you've learned from books and just things that have been regurgitated over and over and over as like, this means this means this planet means this thing, this plant is this. You have to work with whatever resonates for you and your own personal beliefs and your own personal needs. And so I like that, even though it gives you a lot of the tools and correspondences and the bases behind those correspondences, should you choose to use them, it does a good job of also in these books reminding us that we don't need all of these things. The most important is just us and our personal connection and our personal willpower. And so, yeah, you'll have to study and experiment with all of these things to determine what works best with your own practices and your own energies. It talks about elemental magic, trance and magic, which I think To Light a Sacred Flame definitely goes way more in depth on trance and magic and techniques and methods by which you can do that type of thing. Cauldron magic. And then as we get toward the end here, there's a lot of charts. There's a chart breakdown of different basic magical alphabets and their symbols. There's a chart for planetary hours and correspondences if you really want like to get really into things and fully break them down. Basics of banishing, chanting, cauldron magic, and yeah, just some basic minor magics that you can do. There's a brief little passage here on what they call star bones or like bone casting, which is definitely something I want to get into. I'm kind of developing like not really a rune bag, but just my own personal bag of like odds and ends to use for like bone throwing, but with other objects besides just bones. So yeah, I like that it even gives you like a chart that you can use for throwing, and different, each section of the pie is kind of related to a different thing. So depending on where your objects land, it would correspond to like work, family, whatever. So yeah, that's definitely something that I'm into and kind of want to start practicing more. And then it does have like an interesting breakdown here on kind of some of the traditions of witchcraft and Wicca, like taking the oaths, the Wiccan Rede, types of traditions and legitimacy, and like what it means to be a lineaged witch. The different degrees and different breakdowns and types of degree systems that you might find in different traditional witchcraft practices. So that was really interesting to kind of get kind of a basic breakdown, even though some of those practices and like the specific rites and rituals and words are closed practice and not revealed unless you are initiated in these orders to these degrees. But it's very interesting as someone who like never went down that path but wanted to learn more about it, and to get that kind of breakdown of what the degrees are and like what they mean and what a person might be doing or studying depending on their degree. I do think it's interesting that they bring in the year and the day concept, which I think was something I kind of personally brought in on my own journey here when I first got in touch with the Norse gods and wanted to go down this path. I said I kind of wanted to give myself that traditional year and a day, which they say is important for both solitaries and group members because it's considered a time of gestation. And it's just, yeah, like a time to really get in touch with yourself over this year to really explore the path and research it and decide whether it is or isn't for you and something that you really want to stick with and pursue further before you go all in and like make a blood oath to Odin, say. Like maybe I said, I'm gonna give myself a year and a day to really study Norse paganism and see like what it is, what it entails, how could I incorporate it into a daily practice, and am I still feeling connected to these gods and to these things a year on, or has it faded? Which no, it has not. It's still going strong. Like I said, still here. Can't argue with the results. But yeah, it's important to kind of give yourself that time and not try to rush into it too soon or make oaths or promises that you may come to regret. And so, yeah, like before you really dedicate yourself by, whether it be like dedicating yourself to further study or actually taking an oath or an initiation or a rite of dedication to a specific path or what have you, I think it's important to give yourself that time to really study before you move further. And so, yeah, I'm going on like 2 years now, actually. As we speak, toward the end of August was when I first met my homegirl Freya over here, and she changed my life and set me on this path. But yeah, overall, like I said, I didn't really find this book quite as like thoroughly engrossing as I did with the To Light the Sacred Flame. That one I was just like really sucked into and kind of reading cover to cover and highlighting all over the place. This one I didn't really like highlight so much stuff. I had a lot of the little things here to point out in the chat with you all, but yeah. Overall, what else do I have here in my little notes? Yeah, kind of my big takeaway, I think, especially now having read 2 of the books in this series as someone who, yeah, like I said, never went down that traditional witchcraft place and sometimes didn't always see the point or the need to do things by the book and do things like cast a circle and call quarters and all of that. I have now been in some group rituals where that was done, and I did feel like more of a sense of groundedness as soon as like that circle was set into place and those things and like those quarters or whatever the terms that were being used were called. And so they do a job in these books of presenting these ideas in a way that is just like a general outline and makes it really easy for you to insert and slot different deities or different needs that you might have for doing the rituals as needed and just kind of build and adapt from there. But yeah, definitely as far as following traditional ritual procedures in context, as far as when I mentioned, like, yeah, being a good guest and host when you're hosting or doing a ritual on someone else's land, which to be fair, anywhere in North America, we are on someone else's land. So, and yeah, just being a good host as far as containing ritual energy to the space, making sure everyone within that ritual space is connected and that you're being a good guest in terms of not just leaking that energy and calling those deities in to trample all over a space and just being thoughtful and polite and purposeful about those types of things in a big group ritual context is definitely something that I have learned from reading and from experience. Does have its purpose and its place and can be something very important depending on the time and the place that you're in and who you're with. And as far as, yeah, like properly containing energy, having land and deities or whoever to back you up, and just being able to close down and safely dismiss those energies purposefully and politely when you're done is part of being a good guest as well, and just being careful and respectful when leading others in ritual workings is like proper. So yeah, proper guest host behavior, turns out, applies even when it comes to magic. Who knew? But yeah, in terms of how I'm going about that in my own personal practice, and do I want to word things in a way that might be inadvertently erecting a barrier in between me and the things that I'm trying to connect to, maybe that's just something that for me merits further study. Which, there is one more book left in this series, which, if you are a member over at my Buy Me a Coffee website, it's kind of like Patreon, but it's also kind of like PayPal. So I have it set up to where you can just like leave like a little dollar tip here and there as the mood strikes you. If you like what I do here on the channel and want to just show some support and just kind of give a little tip, you can do that over there. But then I also did take the step of kind of like Patreon, setting up membership tiers, if you will, where mostly it's just the book club. And if you are a member there, I put up a poll every month where you can vote, and I have a selection of books that I have chosen, and I will put them up in the poll. And if you are a member, you will get access to the poll and be able to vote on which books that I select and that we read for the book club each month. So right now I have a poll up over there, and I do have the first book in this series by Silver RavenWolf up as an option there, but for me it will be the third book that I'm reading out of them, because I'm like going in reverse order, because that's how we like to do it over here. But right now the book that is in the lead as of the time of this live stream broadcast is The Healing Power of Trees by Charlene Hidalgo, which I had also already read and reviewed her book on Celtic tree rituals, which I really liked and which comes in handy as someone who is also interested in and studying the whole druidry side of things. I just finished filming part 1 of a series of videos that have been planning and have been really excited and really wanted to do for a long time, all about druidry and like what that means for me in my own personal practice, because I've been over here calling myself a Norse druidic pagan this entire time. So yeah, now that I've kind of done a lot, I've had my year in a day, if you will, with studying Norse paganism, I'm ready to kind of delve into studying more of the druidry side of things. So I am kind of very excited that this book is in the lead, because I've had it for a while and I haven't opened it up yet. So I am excited to read about the healing power of trees. It says the subtitle for this book is Spiritual Journeys Through the Celtic Tree Calendar. So maybe I'll be excited to see how this compares and contrasts with the book on Celtic tree rituals, because that's another book that I have found myself going back to as it goes through the entire kind of wheel of the year, and corresponds each one with a tree and Celtic tree magic. So yeah, this is kind of going to be a more in-depth study of Ogham. I know I'm probably butchering that, but I'm excited to further study and delve into that, because you're going to probably hear me say a lot on this channel, especially as we get more into the druidry side of things, trees make the best friends. They really do. That's why, why above all else, you just really need to go outside, even if it's just in your own backyard or just anywhere where a tree or a plant is available to you. They just make the best friends. And so I'm excited to delve into that side of things more with you guys. So check out my Buy Me a Coffee website over at Cute Girly Goth, and become a member over there if you want to join the group of librarians and not only help for me to buy these books that I read and discuss on the channel. That's kind of why I have it, instead of like buy me a coffee, I have it set up to as buy me a book. You can help donate toward the library and help me to choose which books that we read and discuss every month on here. So as we head into the hour mark, thank you so much if you were able to join me, and thank you so much if you're coming back to watch this video later. At least kind of one of the nice things, even if it's just kind of me in here talking to myself, is that I can at least turn it into more of a book review for you, if nothing else. So I hope you found my ramblings entertaining, if not useful, and I will see you guys for next month's live stream. Until then, stay classy, pagans.